Alright guys, how's it going? I've got a lot of good things to tell you guys about the Durston Gear X Pro Mid 2. Alright, so my first impression of the tent, the first time I set it up to sleep in it, I realized that I really like the material that's used on the tent floor. It's a really nice, thin, fast drying, ultra lightweight silk nylon that just felt good in my fingers. And that was when I really realized that I was excited about this new tent, that it was going to be awesome using it. There's some really interesting architecture to the cordage that connects the corners of the tent floor to the canopy, to the DCF tarp. And just overall, the tent is just a really rewarding experience to use. I think the most luxurious aspect of the tent were the zipper doors. The no-seam doors are super easy to unzip and zip closed, so that if you're cooking or if you're working on something in your vestibule, it's really easy to zip those doors open and shut just over and over and over again. Sometimes, zippers can be kind of annoying. But if it's buggy out, you want your zippers shut all the time. And you only want to open up those zippers if you open up that door if you're going to be sticking your hands out to do something in the vestibule. And while I was using the door, I noticed it's so easy just to zip that door open, stick my hands out, cook a little, pull my hands back in, zip it shut. It's very seamless and kind of luxurious. I think the most luxurious aspect of the tent is the door. Another awesome basic fun fact about any gear that you hear about on the internet that's just totally awesome and everybody wants it is that it probably looks cool. Whether it's like a Ducati or a Harley or a Tesla or a Lambo or whatever. Stuff that's the best on the internet, you're more or less guaranteed that it's going to have a lot of wow factor, that a lot of people are going to think it's awesome. I went on a hike in the Trinity Alps in between Humboldt and Redding, up above tree line, where I went on a hike called the Canyon Creeks Lake Hike, and I hiked up to the Canyon Creek Lakes, which are some alpine lakes there. And everybody who was on this hike was stoked already because the hike is awesome. But there were some people who actually were even more stoked just to see a cool tent that's like the best of the internet. They hadn't really seen the tent in person before. It's obviously cool looking. And they were just stoked. There were college students who actually said hi to me just because the tent was awesome. And the way that the ridgeline on the shelter is at a 45-degree angle causes the shelter to look like a UFO. And as you know, UFOs are famous for cutting through the air really easily. And yeah, that's one of the advantages of the Durston Gear X Pro Mid 2 is that its geometry allows the wind to blow over it super easily. And it's hunkered down and really solid in the wind. As far as the living space inside of the shelter, I felt like it was really roomy for one person. The tent floor prevents any of your stuff from really getting dusty or anything. Everything is in there with you. There's a few other aspects of the tent that I liked a lot. For instance, the magnet on the door worked really well for me. I thought that the DCF door was very intuitive and the magnet was fun to use. It was really flippy and clippy and kind of clips into place, and it's easy to tug at that door and pull it down. Same thing with the no-seam door, also really intuitive, really easy to use with the shock cord closure that it has on it. It just seemed like while I was using the tent, all of the nuances about the tent that make sense, they all kind of were revealed to me while I was using it. It was just fun to find out how perfect everything is on the tent. There's a lot of attention to design. And I think the version that I got is a really good one. I've got the pockets. Mine has got the pockets. It's got the good magnets. It's got 2 zippers on the no-seam door. And I think the one that I've got is awesome. I really like my tent. Also, the Z-Flick poles that I got from Durston are rock solid. They're very lightweight and they hold in place awesome. And so that was a load off my mind, just knowing that my shelter would be staked out and set up perfect without an issue. It really did look like I could leave it set up the way that it was for 48 hours or maybe even 3 days or more. Now, as far as some negatives, I would say the only 2 negatives that I would really bring up during this first impression video after my first hike with the Durston X Pro Mid 2 is that, first of all, pitching it out. When I was staking out the tent and pitching it, I found that when I was on the outside of the tent and I would pull at the zippers on the DCF doors, pulling at the zippers would pull out the opposite stake at the opposite corner. So this tent is famous for being able to be staked out with 4 stakes, but I really prefer to stake it out with 8 stakes because part of the awesome factor of the design is that it's rock solid in the wind, but obviously it's going to be more stable with more stakes. The tent is a lot more stable with 8 to 10 stakes rather than 4. And one of the issues is that the stakes have a tendency to pull out while you're pulling at those zipper doors. If you've got your zipper doors staked out, then that stabilizes the tent a little and prevents there being so much tugging at the opposite end of the tent while you're using the zippers. So when I set up the tent, I noticed some of the corner stakes popping out. And so the tent had to be staked out like 1.5 times or 2 times before I got everything really rock solid. So there a little bit of extra attention needed to be made to while staking out the tent. The other issue with the tent would just be the DCF itself. As you sacrifice weight, you sacrifice comfort. So your DCF shelter is never going to be as comfortable as nylon. It just isn't. Whether you get it from Z-Packs or HMG or whoever, you know, nylon is always going to be more comfortable than DCF. And even the 0.75 ounce DCF that's available from Z-Packs is going to give you more shelter from the sun and the moonlight, and it's also going to give you more privacy than the 0.55 ounce DCF. And this Durston Gear X Pro Mid 2 is only available in 0.55 DCF or nylon. And there just isn't as much comfort in that 0.55 DCF. It's not as easy to take a nap in the afternoon because the sun shines into the tent and causes the tent to be kind of hot. When you first get into the tent at the end of the day, it can be kind of humid and stuffy and really sweaty inside the tent, maybe for like 30 minutes or an hour, until the condensation really starts to figure itself out and lay on that DCF tarp. Things can be kind of stuffy in there at first. Also, it just doesn't give as much privacy from like the moonlight. The moon looked like somebody was standing near my tent and pointing a flashlight at the tent. And then at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, some people hiked by with headlamps on and they made me kind of nervous. And I was looking at them. You know, I was inside my tent kind of staring at them, watching their headlamps go by. They pointed their headlamps at my tent and they could see me looking at them inside my tent. So there just obviously isn't as much privacy inside DCF as there is with nylon. Also, DCF is louder in the rain and in the wind. And that's really what the zippers are about. The zippers prevent the DCF from flapping in the wind. Sailboat sails are also made out of DCF. And in sailing, when your sails are flapping, that's called luffing. And if you're a pro sailor, your sails are never supposed to be luffing. And in the wind, you know, the DCF doors on your shelter are going to start flapping and making noise. And that's what the zippers do, is the zippers pull down those DCF doors and prevents them from flapping and making so much noise in the wind. And since the Durston Gear X Pro Mid 2 came out with zippers, it's put a lot of pressure on cottage company backcountry outfitters. And HMG and Z-Packs have both started selling a shelter with zippers. And so, you know, considering how difficult it is to get a hold of a Durston Gear X Pro Mid 2, you have to, you know, pay an extra $200 and you have to wait a couple extra months and what have you. It's just a longer, more complicated, more expensive process to get the Durston Gear tent in comparison to HMG and Z-Packs. You can go on HMG or Z-Packs website and order it, you know, right now, and your tent will show up in a few weeks. Whereas with Durston Gear, you have to wait to get an email from them, and it does cost a little extra. So, you know, a DCF shelter with zippers, it is available now from Z-Packs and HMG. You don't have to wait to get the Durston Gear. And that really is a result of Durston Gear putting pressure on cottage companies to add a zipper to their shelter so that the shelters are more usable in the wind. Also, you know, the Durston Gear shelter is available in nylon, and even though that nylon is heavier to carry, it is always going to be comfortable. That nylon is always going to be more comfortable. It's going to give you more privacy. It's going to be more versatile than DCF, bottom line. And it also probably is easier to order from Durston Gear. Not only that, but there's also an alternative to Durston Gear's nylon version of the tent, because Sierra Designs sell a similar tent called the Sierra High Route 2 tarp. So, you know, you could go to REI or to Backcountry and you could order that Sierra Designs High Route 2 tarp and receive it like in 48 hours, you know, or you could go to Durston Gear and buy the nylon version of the X Mid 2. You know, it's up to you basically. Carrying a DCF shelter is always going to be easier than carrying a nylon shelter. But the nylon shelter is always going to be easier to live in. You know, the experience of living in the shelter, the comfort is all with nylon. The experience of carrying a shelter, the ease is all with the DCF. So if your focus is on carrying the shelter, you want DCF. If your focus is on living in the shelter, you want nylon. I personally think that I got the best one. I think this X Pro Mid 2 in DCF that I got is really good. I'm pretty happy with it. So yeah, that's basically it.